There is a time in history that many may not be aware of the pivotal role Our Lady played for the salvation of Europe, the conquering of the Mohammedan forces that were coming to destroy her. And if it wasn't for Our Lady, would we have Europe and America? And the answer is probably not to the way we know it in this day and age. So there was a battle fought today, October 7th, back in the 1500s. And you may not have been taught this one in any education, whether that was in grade school, learned about it in your Catholic faith, or even heard about this very important battle in college. So if you do not know about it, it was called the Battle of Lepanto, and it is where Our Lady, by the faithful of Europe praying the Rosary, and the Austrian forces drove out the Islamic forces out of Europe. And it was a very pivotal battle at sea at the Battle of Lepanto. So a little history coming in here. You can actually read this entire report on holyinnocentschooolmn.org and go to the Battle of Lepanto on it. But an understanding of the Mohammedan forces and how they came to be and where they came from. So Muhammad was born in 570 AD. In his 40s, he had a vision of the angel Gabriel and supposedly a message from God. And that is literally where his new religion, Islam, was founded. So this religion was very much based on oppression, the killing of those that did not become believers, and destroying and taking over. And there's a lot of facts in history that are listed in here that disbelievers are ever unto you open enemies. You can lie to further Islam. And they went on a very bloody rampage, taking over many parts of Upper Africa and all through Europe. And they, in fact, took over Constantinople in their bloody massacre. So, mid their strife and their fours that they came in there, they would cause utter destruction. They swept through the Middle East, slaughtering, burning, and committing countless atrocities against men, women, and children, massively wiping out and murdering entire cities and towns. And if you did not convert, you were to be assassinated. Fight everyone in the way of Allah and kill those who disbelieve in Allah. And this is quoted specifically from their texts. And again, I do have the references posted below. But within a century of Muhammad's death, by 632, Islam had swept to the Iberian Peninsula, subdued the Middle East and North Africa, and even stretched to the borders of India, being made, as Muhammad had put it, victorious with terror, terrorizing the entire civilization and different nations of they just come in and destroy with force and make you convert, or if you'd have to leave your home, your lands, and they would take over. Its advance into Western Europe was only halted by the Frankish king Charles Martel at the Battle of Tours in France in 732 AD. In whatever lands the Muslims conquered, all of their forces were converted to their religion, faced the prosecution of death, or pay a tax called jizya as part of a payment of protection. In 1453, the Islamic forces captured Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire. This empire for many years had stood as a barrier between Christian Europe and Islam. Now that it had fallen, Christian Europe was vulnerable to attacks from the east. In less than 100 years, a large part of southeastern Europe was subdued, and the Islamic hordes only slowed its efforts in that region after two failed sieges of Vienna, the capital of the Holy Roman Empire. In the 1500s, the Ottoman Empire had begun a concerted effort to take control of the entire Mediterranean. And this is where it comes relevant to the Battle of Lepanto. In 1565, they attacked the island of Malta in the West Mediterranean, which was controlled by the Knights of St. John. After a long siege, the Ottomans were defeated and instead turned their eyes to the island of Cyprus in the Eastern Mediterranean. So it is amazing when you're looking into the history of where all the troops came from, how they would go on and conquer or get conquered. So in that same year, Venice, Spain, Sicily, Genoa, Sardinia, and the Papal States, the Knights Hospitaliers, various Italian duchies joined forces into a Catholic alliance. And they all went under the leadership of Don Juan of Austria. The Pope presented him with a blessed flag with the image of Christ crucified to be the banner of this Holy League. Don Juan also received from King Philip II of Spain a banner of Our Lady of Guadalupe. Pope Pius V called upon all of Europe to ask the aid of God in this expedition, and particularly requesting that of the Rosary of the Blessed Virgin Mary be recited for this intention. So the fleet sailed off to meet with the Mohammedan forces, and it's amazing where the battle took place and the history and everything that goes into there. When the entire fleet was mustered, they had 212 ships. 206 were galley. The remaining 6 were large, heavy glacials mounted on front and sides with large, heavy guns. There were approximately 30,000 oarsmen and sailors and around 35,000 soldiers. It is amazing when you understand combined that's only 65,000, but oarsmen and sailors were literally manning the ships with only 35,000 strong to fight the Mohammedan forces. An interesting note to take in here is when they set out to fight the Mohammedan forces, they reached the island of Rhodes, where they received the news that the Venetian besieged at Famagusta had surrendered and its garrison were butchered alive. The Muslims even had the Catholic leader of the garrison flayed alive and his skin stuffed with straw and paraded around the city of Famagusta on a donkey. When the Christian fleets heard this news, they were more determined than ever. They did not quiver. They did not fear. They're like, oh my gosh, we got to turn around. They sieged on, and they, under the direction of Don Juan, went to the Adriatic Sea. The Holy League fleet moved to the Gulf of Patras then and prepared to do battle. The banner of the Holy League was raised aboard the flagship. The Holy Eucharist was administered to all, and Don Juan issued to his men the most powerful weapon on earth, the Rosary. This is a very key part. All of Europe was praying the Rosary. The soldiers prayed the Rosary. They had God on their side, and he requested his entire army to recite this prayer and ask the Blessed Virgin Mary for victory. Before the battle even began, one of Don Juan's commanders looked at him and was like, maybe we should do this or retreat. And Don Juan said, the time of counsel has passed. Now is the time of war. And then he shouted to his men, my children, we are here to conquer or die. In death or in victory, you will win immortality. Both sides lined up. And it was amazing when you're looking at the prayer, as they call it, moves mountains. And in this fact, Our Lady controlled the winds in order to give them the best fighting chance possible. Commanders of both forces commanded their centers. The Holy League positioned 2 large glacials in front of each of its wings. It initially had trouble drawing up into formation on account of the wind, which was not in the League's favor, but that very quickly turned in the course of battle. The Catholics prayed that the Turks would not engage before they were drawn into formation, and the wind suddenly changed in their favor. By late morning, all the Catholic right wing was in full position. Around noon, both fleets began to close in on each other. As the Turks advanced, they were met with withering barrage of cannons from the glacials of the Holy League left and center. On account of this, many Ottoman ships were lost before actual contact was made, being cut to pieces under the unrelenting fire of the heavily armed Venetian ships. First contact was made on the Holy League left wing, close to the northern shore of the Gulf. In the vicious hand-to-hand combat that ensued, both the Ottoman and the Holy League commanders of these 2 wings that clashed were killed, and the tide turned swiftly in favor of the Christians only after a large amount of galley slaves escaped the Ottoman ship and joined the Holy League's side. And you have to realize a lot of the galley slaves were taken from Europe and the countries that they would go against, and they would conquer, and if you did not convert, they would turn you into slaves. So they were very glad to escape and become part of the Holy League. Meanwhile, the 2 centers clashed and ferocious combat began. In the confusion, the flagships of both fleets with their admirals on board met face to face. Admiral Ali Pasha was killed by Don Juan and his flagship taken. After 2 hours of brutal hand-to-hand fighting, the Ottomans were finally beaten on the left and the center. On the right wing, the situation was a bit different. The Holy League commander of the right wing noticed that the Ottoman left, which was facing both the began to move south away from the main fleet. Fearing that this might be an attempt to outflank him, he moved parallel to the Ottomans. This, however, created a gap in the Holy League formation, exposing the right flank of their center. Seeing this, the Ottoman commander seized the advantage and charged into the gap, smashing into the Holy League center. This created much confusion, and the Christians feared it would turn the tide of battle in the favor of the Ottomans. However, the gap was filled by a reserve force of the Knights of Malta, and the Ottoman commander involved, realizing the battle was lost for him, broke the Holy League line and sailed away. Isolated fighting along the battle line continued into the evening, but at the end of the day, it was clear that the Ottomans had suffered a crushing defeat by the Christians. The Ottomans had lost over 25,000 men and 180 ships, while the Holy League had only lost around 10,000 men and 13 ships. While all this fighting had been going on, the people of Europe raised up prayers to God through the Virgin Mary, asking for victory against the mighty beast of Islam. In Rome, Pope Pius V was meeting with his treasurer when the battle was at its close. He suddenly rose, went to the window, and gazed into the sky. He turned around, said, "This is not a moment for business. Make haste to thank God, because our fleet this moment has won a victory over the Turks." He instituted the feast of Our Lady of Victory to commemorate this great battle, which had won because of all of Christendom entreaties to the Blessed Virgin Mary through her Rosary. The Battle of Lepanto was a significant defeat of the Ottoman navy, which had been undefeated since the 15th century. While it did not cripple the size of the Ottoman navy, as they were able to rebuild their fleet in just 6 months, they suffered a major psychological defeat, and the quality of their new fleet was significantly lower. They were no longer viewed as a threat by Catholic Europe or as invincible, and the morale of the Ottoman troops was significantly lowered as a result. Furthermore, the battle halted the Ottoman encroachment into Italian territories in the Mediterranean. The following year, the Holy League resumed operations in the Mediterranean, but the head of the Ottoman navy avoided any armed conflicts with them and fled to safety of their fortress of Modon in southern Greece. So you have to look at the history of this very important day. October 7th is the feast of Our Lady of Victory, of the Holy Rosary. And we have seen an amazing victory on this day back in the 1500s, but it does not end there. You need to, as a family, say every single day the Rosary of Our Lady. If you need the Rosary CD, you can order it at holyinnocentsschoolmn.org and pick up your CD or order through there. There's also several Catholic songs, tapes, CDs put out as well. But no matter what, get down on your knees. As a family, prayer starts in the home. A family that prays together stays together. Take Our Lady and Saint Joseph as your role models of what a Catholic home is supposed to be. But as a family, start every single day saying the joyful, the sorrowful, and the glorious mysteries of Our Lady, and ask her to help bring the Catholic faith back to the world, to drive out the Mohammedan forces, and to create a Catholic society that is so lacking in the world today.